Okay, so here's where we left off. We have a very robotic walk, and what we want to do is our passing pose. So here's frame one. On 4, our foot plants, and I'm going to be constantly filling with this, but he should be down. She should be a little bit down, a little bit more. So if I moved it down there on 4, I'm going to select 16 and hit S to set a key. So it should be like this. Oh, you know what? There's a little bit of an issue every time I keep hitting S is, remember, we have a little bit of a rotation in the hip, and if I hit S to set a key, it's going to lock in the other rotation, and I want that. So all I want to do is hit 4 here, and then just look at where it is on minus 25 here. So we have a 0.9, so let's do minus 0.2 here, and then on 16, let's just copy that value and then go to 16 and paste it in and hit enter so that we have that similar up and down movement. And we really need to go into the graph editor and make sure that this is all the same height and we have a nice curve for the bounce. So here's 1. That's a lot of rotation in the hips. If it needs to be that much, but let's just do, for both of these, minus 35. Yeah, it looks a little bit better, and then this would just be a positive 35. It's not as extreme. There we go. Okay, so now let's do our passing pose. So on 7, what happens is our character really starts to straighten out. And as this foot comes forward, that back right foot, we pop up. This foot goes completely flat on 7, and this foot starts to lift off the ground. Let's get a little bit of toe pivot in there. So it's somewhere back here. So this foot lifts off the ground around 4. I'm going to bring it down just a little bit because we don't want our character to look like it's too uneven. And we'll clean up this stuff in our NG tools in a second. So that's part of the point of the walk, right, is we're checking to see if it cleans up. So here's 7. So we really want 16 to be the same. So let's see if we just do a minus 0.7 here, how that looks. Doesn't look bad. And then a 0.3 here. So let's do the same. So on 16, we're going to do a, well, let's kind of like, here's 7. I like the way that looks. So let's start from the bottom up. So on 13, this foot starts to slide back on 16. And at this point, it's underneath it. So we want to make sure that our foot has translated, this front foot has translated to about, well, let's see at 0 what that looks like. It's completely flat. And then what about 0 here? Yeah, so let's do the same thing. So on 19 rather, we need this front foot to be pretty much underneath him, underneath her. And then we want our height to be, what happens if it's zeroed out? Yeah, let's just do 0 for now. So 19, we're going to zero that out as well. So this, and we know that this foot should be completely flat here. Actually, wrong foot. This foot that's coming back should be completely flat. So let's zero all of these out and zero this out. There we go. So as we flip between these, they start to look like each other. And then we have a 0.3 and a 0.7 here. So this back foot should be about a 0.3 and a minus 0.7. And then what did we get for our toe roll here? We had a 8. So we want to do an 8 here. So let's do a minus 8 here. So now we have pretty much the inverse. So let's take a look at how that looks. There we go. We're getting there. And let's actually, this might not be a bad time to sort of introduce you a little bit to the graph editor. So I'm going to go ahead and select this back foot first. And I'm going to go to Window, Animation Editor, Graph Editor. And let's dock this down above the Mel. here. And if you change your view to animation, it gives you all kinds of nifty tools. But for now, we're just going to go ahead and just look at this. So one of the key issues we have too is notice our up and down is a little bit blocky. See how it sort of shakes a little bit there, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select my translate Y, which is my up and down here. And you can see the controls are really all over the place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this spline tangents, and I'm going to actually break the tangents. Now, what is a tangent? It's one of these guys right here. So you can see here, if I select this and I select one handle, it sort of evens it out. What I like to do is have a little bit more control, so when I break the tangents, it gives me control where I can control each side individually. See that? So let's take a look at our foot here. So on one, let's see, looks like in the negative zone. Negative is where, remember, we had her in our initial T-pose. So here on one, it's going up. Notice that we have this ugly curve. I'm just going to round that out a little bit like that. So we get a nice, beautiful curve as it's coming up. Same thing here. I want to clean this up a little bit. So, and then as it comes down, I don't want it to go underneath the floor. That what's happening here is it's dipping. Let's zoom in a little bit here so you can see that. It's dipping below the floor. So I'm going to flatten those keys out, and then I'm going to bring this up a little bit so it's a hard hit. So watch this as it comes down, boom, and then it slides. Now we get a little bit back and forth. So why is that happening? Notice the direction that it's shifting, right? It's shifting on the Z axis. So if we go to our Z, right off the bat, you can see, look at all this ugliness, right? So we want it to, same sort of thing, right? I'm going to select all these guys. I'm going to key that. I'm going to break my tangents. And what I want is, like, does this need to dip underneath? Actually, I think it does, because remember our toe has a little bit of up movement. So let's see what happens. Let's flatten these out. Imagine this is the floor, so I'm going to flatten that. Boom. And then let's go to the key problem area, right? So as it's coming up off, it plants, right? We need to bring this down a little bit on our Y. Let's bring our Y back. Bring that down to the floor. Let's go to the right view here so we can see that for a little bit. So our toe is there. Our foot plants. We want this. Let's make sure that's a little bit smoother. There we go. There we go. Let's make sure on translate Y that this foot comes down at the right time. See that? Boom. That foot comes across and it slides nicely. And I might give it a little bit more because it kind of pauses a little bit too much there, but that's okay. So let's take a look at, so we kind of got rid of our sliding, and maybe I want it to slide just a tad bit. There we go. So it shows a little bit of weight. That could be more of an aesthetic. So let's take a look at how that foot looks now. Yeah, it holds too much. The foot snaps too much there. So remember, that was the Z axis. So I'm going to pull that up a little bit. Come on. Just going to pull this off and we could see the whole thing. Alright, so we know that it's holding, let's see, on Z, in between these two. So let's flatten that. And look what happens if we pull this down just a little bit. Now it starts to slide a little sooner. We don't want it to hold that long. There we go. So he starts to skate a little bit as his foot comes, or she's, rather, her foot. Let's make these smoother too. Because there's a weight distribution there. Okay, let's press play and see. Let's do this for the other foot. There we go. Now the other reason is that you want a harder plant there is as this foot comes down on 13, we want the toe to point out. So that's why we added on this foot at least, we added a heel pivot. So we're going to have to add that to this other foot in a second. So that's going to be a good reminder on how to add those things. But for now, let's clean up this other foot too. So here's our other foot here. So let's go ahead and clean that up, and then we can move on to the next video. Looks like it's dipping through the floor here. No, looks good. Okay, so let's go ahead and fix the other foot too. So here's this foot. So you can see it's kind of ugly. So let's look at translate Y. You can see it's all over the place. So right off the bat, on 4, it's not completely planted. So let's just grab all these. Do that. Let's break our tangents. There we go. So here's 1, 4. Our foot should be planted here. So let's grab our translate Y. Bring that down. Same situation. I'm going to just auto tangent and break this. There, sliding back. Actually, I really like the way that Z looks here. It's a really nice curve. It goes really smooth, whereas this one sort of holds. So I'm going to steal that. So here's my translate Z here. And if I look at that, the way the other one looked, let's kind of bring this down. There we go. That's a lot smoother. Okay, let's finish this one so we can complete the video. Actually, that one looks pretty good. All right, let's take a look at our foots. Not bad. And remember, we're only going to 24. So if we type 24 here, you can see that it'll loop a lot cleaner. All right, so what we'll do in the next video is I'm going to add that heel pivot onto the other foot, and we'll start adding that in there. And then playing with our knees, or moving our center of balance. Actually, let's just knock that out now. So what happens is on frame 7 is our weight starts to shift over the foot. So we get something like that. So you can see that as our foot climbs over. And so I move that on the, let's see, on the X. Let's see if it's how bad 0.1 looks. 0.2. 0.2 is really exaggerated, but I think I'm going to stick with that. So here's 16. I'm going to do a minus 0.2 on that. Yeah, that's way too exaggerated. Looks like she broke her hip. So on 7, we did a 0.2. Let's do a 0.15 and then a minus 0.15 here. And we get not too bad. When we add in the foot rolls and stuff, you know what? I'm going to err on the side of more subtle. So 0.1 and then minus 0.1 just for the hip movement. Let's see how that looks. Great. Now let's make sure that 25 is the same. So here's 1. And then let's go back to 25 here. So here's 1. Click in here. Set a key. And so now we should have a smoother hip movement. 1. Looks like the rotation is off. So, But I do like the rotation on the ending frame, so I'm going to ask to set a key. I middle mouse click that, so now they should both be identical. There we go. So here's 25, here's 1. Yeah. All right, so that's that.